hate my mother's mannequins. My brother and I were high when we found them. It was my first summer back home from college, and before we even finished our hellos, Jeremy took me into the garage to smoke the first weed he'd ever grown himself. Now, go easy on this stuff. He toasted the corner of his bong's bowl. I call it sour schizo. I raised my eyebrows at him and smirked. You really got to work on your marketing skills. Okay, college girl, like you'd know what's popular on the streets. He started sucking and the bong bubbled full of smoke so thick it looked like liquid. He pointed his chin at the ceiling and exhaled an impressive column of smoke. Everyone around here is giving their shit pretty names. Dank Daffodil, Rainbow Bud. He held a hand up while he coughed. But nah, you got to be different. This name promises something different. Same with my other strain, my stronger one, Lobotomy Bud. I'm really not looking for a lobotomy when I get high. Speak for yourself. He hit the bong again. I got some cookies made with this stuff in the crisper drawer. Eat half of one and it's as good as a needle to the brain. After the bowl was cashed, we watched the smoke in the hazy garage light. Man, look at these clouds, Jeremy laughed, palming a dirty football. They look like cumulo clouds. What? You know, that one type of cloud. Cumulonimbus? Oh, whatever. If that's how you say it. Smartass. I looked up at the haze. The smoke was stretched and hung sideways in bands. They looked like stratus clouds anyway. The air whooshed over my head and the smoke swirled like a spooked school of fish before settling back lazily. Some metal box banged and fell to the floor. Did you just throw something at me? I meant to miss, sis. The football rolled over to my feet. I picked it up and made him flinch with a few fake outs, and we started laughing hysterically. Suddenly, his smoke-slitted eyes squinted at something behind me. Whoa, look at that pretty lady. I spun around and Jeremy had already stood. He walked toward a head peeking from behind a stack of boxes. It wore an auburn wig and had bright and red lips. The cheekbones were so prominent, they looked as if they could cut you. Hello, didn't see you there. He started moving the boxes to reveal more of the mannequin. My name is Jeremy. He stuttered and splayed his hands across his collarbone. Well, I'm a bit of a botanist, tinkering with the exotics. The beige skin of the mannequin was splotched with dirt and sun-faded in spots. It must have been 40 years old, but the wig it wore was new. Ah, you know what? Never mind, said Jeremy after revealing the mannequin's full figure. Man, even 90s mannequins had more meat than this. What's even this a representation of? Famine? He wasn't quite wrong. Her stomach was vacuumed below her ribs. A man's hand could wrap around her entire waist. A strange if not sickly standard of beauty. Do you think Mom bought these? I asked. Oh yeah, she's been losing it lately. He tossed an old shoebox filled with documents to the floor. Shit, there's more. He pulled up a mannequin of a little girl from the clutter and set it on the concrete floor. When he was done, there were 4 of them staring back at us. 2 men, a woman, and a little girl. A family. Jeremy sat back down, and we stared at the stoic faces in silence. I hate them, I said and shook my head. Even if I wasn't high, I would have been disturbed. It looked like the 4 of them were staring right back at us. Come on. Jeremy picked up the football and chucked it at the woman mannequin. It hit its head and the figure bobbed on its feet. Let's see where Mom got these weirdos. He opened the side door of the garage. The smoke was sucked out and the sun was blinding. And I suddenly felt twice as high. In the kitchen, Jeremy poured a glass of water and handed it to me. Oh, there you are. My mom stepped in from the living room. Jeremy, you steal my daughter away the second she gets here. And she smells like that stinky weed you've been smoking. Hey, Mom. I stepped to her and we hugged. How have you been? Oh, fine. She waved a limp hand. Just fine, considering I've been abandoned by my oldest daughter. How was college? Have you realized yet there are plenty of good schools close to home? Let's not get into this, Mom. I'm happy to see you. My mom pursed her lips, but thankfully didn't retort. Where's Alma? I asked. Your sister's school goes until the last week of June these days. Can you believe it? Something about all the students being dreadfully behind. Ha! All fine by me. I have more days to myself. The school bus drops her off around. She wheeled towards the clock on the kitchen wall. Actually, she frowned. I have no idea. But she appears before dinner. And how's Dad? My mom started brushing crumbs off the counter into her cupped hand. Fat, that's how. You should see him. He must have put on 30 pounds in the last 6 months. I tell him those protein bars he eats are filled with sugar. Might as well be Snicker bars, really. And what does he need protein for anyway? Have you ever seen him lift a weight? I looked at Jeremy and he spun a finger in loony loops around his temple. So, where'd you get the mannequins? What? Her hung head spun towards me in a panic. The freak show in the garage. Where'd they come from? What were you doing in there? Oh. She flared her nostrils and waved her hand. Smoking that stuff, of course. Why don't you just smoke outside? It's a beautiful day. Habit? You used to try to catch us, remember? Yes, Jeremy, because I used to think you could do something with your life. Lobotomy Bud is going to take off. Don't bother calling when you see me on the cover of High Times. He stormed towards his bedroom. Anyway, my mom tossed her hair over her shoulder. Do you remember there used to be that old linens factory behind the dog park? They tore it down not long after you were born. Some teenager fell through the floor. One of those graffitiers, so no big loss. I found all those mannequins buried in some bramble. Like someone tossed them right out. They used to be used in the factory. Maybe they're worth something. Oh heavens, I couldn't sell them. They remind me of us, of our family. When we were still all together at least. Don't you think? I looked at a picture of our family on the wall. Mom, Dad, Alma, Jeremy, and I were all posing for a Christmas card. Our smiles were fake, but my mother's was genuine. I felt bad for her then. A rare thing. Her enthusiasm for family was not shared by any of her children or my father. I smiled pityingly. Yeah, Mom, I said. Sure. Just as my mom was finishing setting up the table for dinner, Alma got home. I'd thankfully sobered up enough to be a human being and to not be questioned by my little sister as to why my eyes were scorched. In her 12-year-old mind, those perpetually high eyes were a staple of my brother, something he was born with. She might start getting suspicious if I suddenly had the same glazed expression as Jeremy. Where's Dad? I asked as we sat. Alma and Jeremy didn't look up from their plates. My mom shrugged. He's not around as much anymore. Since when? I said, alarmed. Oh, since a while. It's not like you'd know, Mrs. 1287 miles. What? That's how far that school of yours is, don't you know? 1287 miles. I looked it up. Mom, where's Dad? Alma widened her eyes as she took a gulp of milk. She wiped her lips and burped. Daddy has a second family. Shut up, Alma, said Jeremy. My mom pushed her plate away from her. Your father was seeing another woman. He's not anymore. But we've been putting things back together for the last couple months. What? I let my fork fall and clanged dramatically on my plate. You didn't think to tell me this? My mom cocked her head to one shoulder. When you move across the country, you end up missing a lot. I don't know why you're acting all surprised. Just because I went away for school doesn't mean I'm not a part of this family anymore. That's fine to think, but that's not how we feel. When I'm older, I'm going away to college too. We all looked at Alma. I decided I'm going to Massachusetts. You can call me Mrs. 2000 Miles, Mom. My mom blanched, but soon a sad expression relaxed her features. If that's what you want, Alma, I can't stop you. I know, she said joyously. Can I eat in my room? Said Jeremy. Fine. My mom tossed her napkin on her plate. How about we all just eat in our room since no one seems to care about being a family here anymore? She stood and thundered down the hall. Alma giggled. Have you seen Mama's mannequins? I think the little girl looked just like me. I smoked a little more before bed to get to sleep, but I woke around midnight. The heat stuck around and had thickened long after the sun set. I went from a blanket to sheet to just laying on top of the bedding in a desperate attempt to stay cool. My bedroom was on the first floor and finally I threw open the window, but it was just as hot outside. I sighed and leaned my palms against the sill as I listened to the tick of crickets. Somewhere a single confused cicada droning out in the dark. I shook my head. Poor guy's biology doesn't think nights could ever get this hot. Suddenly I perked up. My peach fuzz stood like it hit static. In the middle of the yard, the woman mannequin stood staring right at me. Psst, I spoke nervously, half expecting the mannequin's head to move. I would have placed my odds of successfully getting to sleep before I saw that mannequin at a solid 5%. Those odds had now zoomed to 0. It was definitely just Jeremy playing a dumb joke. I don't believe in the supernatural, and I wasn't going to make a fool of myself by waking anybody up over it. I'd put that thing back in the garage. I was angry at it for giving me a fright. It was hot and humid, and the little bit of rage sparked by my insomnia was beginning to boil. I went outside, turned the corner to the backyard, and stumbled. There was nothing in the backyard. The mannequin was gone. My head spun to the fence line. Am I still high? No, I saw that mannequin clear as day. I started towards the garage. I threw open the door and switched the lights on. I flinched when the family appeared. They were here, all 4 of them. But the woman one wasn't where Jeremy had first uncovered her. She stood in front of the others and my throat knotted as I watched her foot finish bobbing, as if she'd just been set down. I had a feeling that something was very wrong, but it wasn't from the placement of the mannequins. I had seen something else. My subconscious was screaming at me to run, but I stood frozen. Then I saw them. In the face of one of the male mannequins were eyes. Wide, staring human eyes. And they were looking right at me. Fuck! I shouted and bolted from the door. I only made it a few steps before tripping. I put my hands down, expecting to brace myself against the driveway, but I had momentum. My head slammed the side of my mom's car long before I could brace for it. I wasn't unconscious, but I was seeing stars. I groaned and rolled so I was on my back. It was too dark to see, but a figure loomed above me. It unfurled a sheet draping my body. The world went darker still. Just as I opened my mouth to scream, something cracked into my skull, and I finally got my sleep. I woke in candlelight. My right eye was swollen shut, and when I flexed the muscles in my face, I could feel flakes of dried blood split from one another. I was at the dining room table. Long candles were set in wax. In their light flashed the faces of the mannequins. The woman mannequin was seated right next to me. Her head was turning to watch me. "Hello?" I called out, but the next thing I knew, I was hyperventilating. I noticed that blood was running from the eyes of the other mannequins, but not like tears. Great streams of blood, almost black in the poor light, were running down their faces and dripping off their chins. I realized my feet were wet and warm. A little flood of blood was washing past my feet. My arms were tied to the chair, but I started furiously scooching away from the table. My feet slapped against the wet floor while the chair shrieked horribly against the hardwood. "Help, Jeremy! Mom, help me!" "Honey?" I heard my mom yell. "Honey, is everything all right?" She appeared in the doorway holding a pan in her oven mitts. "I'm just taking dinner out." "Mom?" I whimpered. "Mom, what's going on?" "I thought we'd try dinner over again. And guess who came home tonight?" She gestured at one of the male mannequins. "Your father. When I found these mannequins, they told me a great idea. They told me I could put all you kids inside of them and never have to worry about any of you running off again. They said we could be a family forever." She rotated one of the chairs, revealing the back of the little girl mannequin. There was a gaping hole that had been stuffed full of red flesh. "Unfortunately, I had some trouble getting your sister and brother to fit. But I got creative. Chop chop," she smiled. "I could only get your father's head in his. Can you believe it? So fat." She said to herself and shook her head. I tilted my head and saw that the back of the woman mannequin next to me was torn open too, but the inside was empty. "Don't you think she's pretty? I think you'll fit just darling inside of her. You may have run off to college, but at least you stayed skinny." "Mom!" I howled. "Don't!" "I'll let you finish dinner, don't worry." She put the pan on the table and picked up an 8-inch chef's knife. "I was going to get to work on getting you in there. Didn't think you'd wake up so soon. Oh, I'll go get up some salad dressing." She walked back to the kitchen. I knew I had to try to get free, but all I could do was cry as I looked at the mannequins that held the carved bodies of Alma and Jeremy. My mother came back in, her footsteps splashing in the blood. "Oh, sweetheart." She set the salad dressing on the table, and I flinched as she patted my cheek. "Don't cry. You don't understand. You never understand," she said, annoyed. I started flailing in my seat, trying to get my arms free, but stopped as I felt cold steel against my skin. My mother held a knife to my neck. "Darling, calm yourself, or dinner will have to wait." I nodded and she set the knife down and dolled potatoes and green beans onto my plate. "You can eat like a piggy. Just put your head down like it's a trough. You've always had such terrible table manners. Why not get it out this last time? Soon you'll always be perfect." I was staring at my plate when I suddenly remembered. "Mom?" I said more calmly. "Yes, dear." "What if we had some dessert to start? Switch things up since this dinner is so special." She laughed. "Dessert first? God, I wonder every day who raised you." "Please, please, Mom, just this one time. Jeremy has these cookies in the crisper drawer." "Oh," she set her fork down and looked around. "Oh, all right. This is a special occasion. I shouldn't be so dreary. But I've had some of Jeremy's baking before and I spat it out. He's not very good." "He said he got better." She ignored me and went back to the kitchen. When she got back, she set the plate of cookies down. She tossed 2 on my plate and took a bite of one herself. "Oh," she chewed and swallowed. "A little funny tasting still, but these are pretty good." She ate the rest of the cookie quickly and my heart lifted. During dinner, I chewed the cookies and spat them out when my face was bent to eat off the plate. I ate as slowly as possible, giving the edibles time to hit. When she suggested she'd clean up, I had her open a bottle of wine instead. It had been about an hour before I saw her eyes begin to glaze, and her limbs grew limp. My husband's head was so heavy. Who knew a head could even be so heavy? A fly buzzed around the table and landed on the eye socket of Alma's mannequin. Alma, you swat that fly off you right now. It's not ladylike. Those were her last words. She began to stare into space, and when a shred of drool spooled off her lip, I leaned forward and shouted, Mom! Her eyes twitched, but her expression didn't change any. Fuck. She really was as good as lobotomized. God damn it, Jeremy, I love you. With my mom incapacitated, I managed to loosen my bindings enough to get free. I ran out the front door bawling as dawn broke. When the police arrived, they found my mom still at the table with a 1,000-yard stare. My brother, sister, and father had all been killed and stuffed into those figures while I first slept that night. I'm still nowhere near okay, but what the police told me when they first entered the house keeps me awake at night nearly as much as my family's murders. There were 3 mannequins, they had said. 2 stuffed with my siblings and the other with my father's head. They had searched the entire property, even the wetlands nearby, when I pleaded, but they were certain. I'm always checking outside my bedroom window in the middle of the night now, because the woman mannequin, the one that sat empty to receive my flesh, it was nowhere to be found.